Hey, Crypto Growth fam, how's it going? This is your host Shazib signing in. We're back with another video, guys. In this video, we will be discussing Flare Network, multi-chain integration. It's going to be an interesting one, guys, so make sure to watch till the end. And folks, for those of you who are new to the channel, we primarily discuss utility coins and potential gems. If you're interested in any of that stuff, then subscribe the channel and hit the notification icon for regular videos. And you can also support the channel by becoming a Patreon. So do check that out as well, only if you're interested. And folks, keep your assets safe, and for that you guys can check out the Crypto Growth exclusive discount offer on Decent. Decent is convenient, safe, and secure. You can check out their biometric wallet, which has got a phenomenal $50 off. And you can also check out their biometric wallet 2x package, guys, which has got an astonishing $129 off, only if you follow the link in the description box below. By the way, folks, Decent supports 3,000 plus of your favorite coins and tokens, and it supports 50 plus blockchain mainnets. I personally prefer storing the assets in a cold hardware wallet, so do check out Decent and be safe. Anyways, guys, now let us look into the price of Flare and Songbird at the time of the recording. Let's see what both of them have been up to lately. So, guys, nothing much. We're still basically testing these support levels over here in the yearly in both the Flare and Songbird. So nothing much in terms of price at the moment. So let's hope that the price of both these assets goes up eventually. Anyways, guys, I was going through the Flare materials, and I saw this proof of talk. Basically, at proof of talk, industry leaders, including Hugo Fillion, were talking about various topics, various aspects of blockchain. So check this out. The discussion and unpacked the challenges and opportunities in creating a seamless, interoperable blockchain ecosystem. The key topics were technological challenges and solutions for seamless interoperability, enhancing scalability, security, and functionality through multi-chain integration, future insights into a connected blockchain ecosystem, innovative approaches to facilitate multi-chain integration. So guys, you have to watch this whole thing yourself. It is 30 minutes long, but we're going to be looking at just a piece of this to see what Hugo has to say and all these other industry leaders. So guys, let's hear them out.
Statements. I know Carol's going to have something to say about that. Yeah.
So for me, at least, like multi-chain integration versus something is really versus the monolithic thesis, right? Like every app on Ethereum or Solana. The question then becomes, how do we make sure that around multi-chain users have the same UX? And really what it boils down to is, can apps easily integrate with other apps across different chains? Right now, we're pretty decently capable of doing so, but the main limitation is actually around the developer experience and integration. I don't need to really know the Uniswap team to integrate a Uniswap pool into my own product, right? We're all in the same VM, in the same chain, and I can just call those contracts permissionlessly. But as a developer, if I'm right now building my own blockchain and I need to integrate with 3 other protocols out there, it's actually a very Web 2 affair where I need to figure out, will layer 0 support these connections, right? And do some BD there, and will those protocols accept my connection? And so making multi-chain work is actually replicating that monolithic experience with everyone being anon, Web3, and just talking code with each other and still having that same connectivity.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I echo all of those sentiments, but I'd say from our perspective, the way we've been looking at it is, how much economic security do you have? There's a huge amount of tail risk, in lots of things. And there's also subjectivity. One of the things I've always found is, what do you do if a chain forks? Which fork do you as an interoperability protocol support? How do you choose that? And that's sort of one of the reasons why we baked in a token, because there's a sort of element of weight of money that chooses a fork, and I think it's very hard with a completely cryptographic protocol to bake in that kind of question.
Does that mean that when there is a choice being made, your token is used to make the user whole again, in case there's lots of funds?
No. It just means that, if we're attesting data, we ultimately, our validators would be choosing some fork. They would have to, in the case of a chain fork. So, if Bitcoin decides to fork again, which one has the value, and ultimately using the token as that mechanism around, okay, if I choose this fork, then the FLR token becomes valueless because it's the wrong fork. That's sort of, one of the key reasons why we're doing what we're doing.
You mentioned this trilemma of speed, cost, and trust or security. I think we can sort of bundle those in the same corner of that triangle. I think cost and speed, people typically understand what those are. It's like, when is it going to cost to send these funds, and how fast is it going to happen? I think the trust assumption, though, is maybe a little harder to grasp. So maybe from the perspective of each of your protocols, like how do they, what trust assumptions do users have to make or to have in order to feel comfortable using your protocol? In other words, like, what is the security model of like each of the protocols?
Yeah, I think I'll keep it a little bit more, I suppose, higher level. But the way that an application, when developing on the layer 0 messaging protocol, goes about making their decisions across this trilemma, essentially the layer 0 deploys endpoints that are entirely immutable, and then everything from kind of cost, speed, through to security is up to the application developer themselves. And I think that's kind of a very important distinction to make when you look at some of the other interoperability providers that are out there. Ultimately, it should be up to both the application developer as well as the user to make the decisions on where they want to sit within that trilemma. I'm sure there are a ton of use cases out there where security is potentially less important, $1 NFT that you might be transferring across chain, but then there are kind of larger applications, something like maybe Stargate, that is moving up to billions of dollars of value a month, where as an application developer, we should be able to choose exactly where we want to sit on that kind of security stack. And so within layer 0 messaging, now on layer 0 v2, there's this concept of the decentralized verifier network. And so there's now up to, I think, 60 different DVNs that you can select from. You can run your own DVN, and they have this kind of X of M and of N, where you could have 7 different DVNs that maybe 3 are required to sign, and then maybe 1 of the other 4 are required to sign. And only once that occurs, then they've attested to the validity of a message, then that message is passed along to the destination chain. And as I pointed out, I think if you're a kind of smaller application and you just want to focus in on the kind of cost and the speed side, you want very low cost, you want very high latency, then you're able to do so, one DVN. If you're securing a lot more value, then you're able to do so as well and kind of build on your security stack there.
So for people in the room, DVN is decentralized validator network.
Decentralized verifier network, yeah.
I think you explained it very well, so I'm going to go into what I find very important on top of that, which is that as a user or developer, I want to know that the system is going to be live, even if the companies that originally built it are no longer live, right? There's a transition into a truly like decentralized community network that's going to be running forever. And for that, you cannot have a relayer dependency. You cannot have the original company that built it be the only one facilitating the transfers. Outside parties have to be able to generate those transactions and facilitate it. That's the equivalent of, can I set up a validator myself and power the network? That's why I'm very bullish on ZKP-based tech, because in this case, any single user can generate a ZKP in their browser and use that to facilitate the underlying transfer. Has some very nice properties, because now you don't have companies that are payment service providers. You have a sufficiently decentralized set of users that could be powering this themselves. And so you really fall in that category of software, not a service. And I feel, especially in crypto, it's always important to be on the software side and not on the service provider side.
So FLR is a blockchain, so the trust assumption is identical to any other blockchain. We are ultimately acquiring data from price sources, so we have a price oracle built into the blockchain, enshrined, and something we call the FLR data connector that gets Web 2 and Web 3 data. All of those are secured by the validators. All of the data is attested, and it sort of has to be attested by all of the validators using their weight of stake. So ultimately, our trust model, our security model, is based on the full stake of the network.
I was just going to say, I completely agree with all of the points you brought up, and I think something that's really interesting about building on layer 0 is the idea that everything within the stack is entirely permissionless. So once the endpoint is deployed on a network, you are able to deploy your own DVN, you're able to obviously deploy your own contracts, wire up your own contracts, and even down to the point of execution. And this is kind of newer to layer 0 v2, when that launched a couple months ago, separating this idea of security and execution. And so now you can deploy your own security stack and run your own execution stack, and that's completely fine if your users don't have to make that, are not making too much of a trust assumption in whoever it is that's running that security and execution stack. But you can also kind of choose from we'll call it the DVN marketplace, the security marketplace, or the execution marketplace. And all of that, again, is entirely permissionless. So definitely agree.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about, composability and highly integrated systems. Interoperability emerged out of this app chain thesis where chains are not atomically verifying the same state, so particularly in Cosmos where we have app chains. But that introduces some new challenges, some new UX challenges, particularly one I'm thinking about is fungibility of assets. So when we move assets from chain A to chain B, those assets are not necessarily fungible because the security model of like chain B or application B is different than that of chain A. How do we solve this? Because I think this is probably one of the biggest issues, UX issues in crypto right now, is that we have just like assets moving across chains with different sort of prefixes in front of the asset that make it difficult for, I think, users to like really manage their assets. Like portfolio management becomes a nightmare, and B, like understand the security implications of holding tokens on another chain. Looking forward 10, 15 years from now, when hopefully crypto infrastructure is making up the bulk of global finance. How do we solve for this problem? Because I think like in the current traditional finance model, like the sort of trust assumptions that are different, but are mostly resolved at the user level.
Yeah, I think putting my Stargate hat back on for a moment, it's something that we think about a lot, this asset fungibility and the idea that as a user, you may have 7 different types of USDC on one chain, and then you want to move over to another chain, and there may be 4 other different types, and how do you actually get your USDC.E/something over to the native USDC that may exist on another chain? And so I think the way that we're solving it is kind of, within each ecosystem, there is either what you might call like a native asset, like Circle does deploy USDC in some ecosystems, but there's also sort of quote-unquote canonical assets, ones that are considered like by social consensus to be the canonical asset. And so allowing fungibility between those different assets, between the different chains that, for example, Stargate is deployed to, will go a long way in simplifying that user experience and being able to compose on top of Stargate on either side, and kind of, you may have USDC/B and Stargate supports one other asset, but being able to do kind of a swap, a bridge, and a swap to the other side, again, simplifies that user experience and allows for that asset fungibility.
Yeah, I only short-term agree with that. Like that's the solution for the next 6 months. Long-term, this doesn't work because you still need that canonical asset to come from somewhere. So we kind of push down the issue now to who actually gets the canonical asset in a sufficient supply on this ecosystem to facilitate those swaps. Long-term, really the only thing that works is if all of these different intro protocols have kind of a shared language about the underlying security that they use. So for example, if a Union Lite client can compare its state with a layer 0 DVN, agree that indeed this other chain has this certain block with these transfers in it, and then buy in from the individual assets. So the individual assets basically need to say, if these bridging protocols agree on a certain state, then we're allowing them to mint us as canonical. And what that would solve is, instead of XLR, Stargate, Wormhole, etc., all figuring out their own solution to liquidity fragmentation, actually the asset issuers have a solution built in, and now everything is
So guys, you have to watch this whole thing yourselves. It is a really good conference where Hugo talks.
Risk of the other chains. So I think if you have a centralized asset like USDC, it's kind of like relatively simple to make that canonical everywhere. But if you're moving, an asset from chain A to chain B and then to chain C, what's the safety? You may know the security of chain A, but you may not know the security of chain B. So if you have to go back through the loop, you essentially your asset becomes dependent on the stake of each chain. And this is, again, why we've chosen to do the attestation token model, where there is subjectivity over what the state of some chain is, then ultimately Flare would be the sovereign entity that is ultimately choosing that because of the weight of the value that is securing the network.
So, guys, what do you guys think about Flare Network and multi-chain integrations? I would really like your opinions. Do hit the comment box below and let the community know. Anyways, guys, this was it for the video. If you liked it, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification icon if you're interested in utility coins and potential gems. And you can also support the channel by becoming a Patreon. So do check that out as well. Like I always say in the end, until next time, stay blessed and stay tuned. Thank you very much, everyone.